Popular anime and manga series are hard to tackle because no one really wants to hurt either side of the field. On one hand, we have die-hard fag boys who sacrifice lambs to the great gods that they fantasize about, while art fags would rather eat grilled shit before admitting that popular series are popular for a reason. But there are a few works out there that both sides actually do agree on, and it's when this coexists in works that life is good. Hello audience, today on Yvern's Box we'll be looking at the widely acclaimed psychologically heavy series known as Death Note. Death Note is a manga series created by the writer Sugumi Oba, the same man who brought us Bakuman, and illustrated by Takeshi Obata, who worked on other well-known works like Bakuman and All You Need Is Kill, that would later be adapted into a 37-episode-long animated series by Studio Madhouse and directed by Tetsuro Araki. After experiencing Death Note, I think everybody agrees that the pen is mightier than the sword. Death Note follows the main character, Light Yagami, an extremely intelligent high school student that is always bored because nothing is on his level of intelligence. He craves for something more, and his time comes when he finds a mysterious notebook called the Death Note. Through a few trials and errors, he eventually finds out that by writing a person's real name while thinking of their face, the Death Note would kill that person. Realizing what he could do with all this power, he proceeds to eliminate criminals in an attempt to rid the world of crime and to rule the world as a sort of god. Over time, however, he meets his rival, known simply as L, a brilliant and young detective who suspects him. The series then presents us this eternal struggle between the two. Now, Death Note's setting is, in one word, original. In a world of harems and comedies, Death Note presents us an incredibly dark and interesting story and plot. Not only does it question some fundamental ethical questions, it does provide an extremely satisfying experience through the mind games and strategic battles that Light and L compete in. The story starts off with a bang and does not let go of this momentum even halfway through the story. But I really do mean it when I say halfway through. Death Note, for all its incredibly well scripted and thought out lines and scenarios, failed to keep moving on after the first half of the series, and while the series is still enjoyable after this, it felt like Death Note's second half wasn't able to keep up with its first, and paled in comparison. Characters that were once pillars that held up the incredible series were left to be forgotten, and more mistakes and flaws slowly piled up until it all came down at the ending. The ending was honestly the most disappointing part of the series, and not because I disagree with what happened, but with how it was done. Death Note remained a highly psychologically heavy series throughout its entirety, with mind games and strategies being used one after the other, and with incredible attention to details that ended up mattering in the long run. The ending decided to throw that out of the window and instead opted the easy way out by presenting us something that was not up to the standard with the rest of the story. However, the story of Death Note in its entirety is more than solid, with the second half only being concerning because of the high standards that the series had set itself during the first, and while the ending wasn't amazing, it was still somewhat satisfying. Death Note is a series that requires multiple characters to make its plot work, and Death Note does this perfectly. Each character has a role to play, which although might seem small at the beginning, ends up mattering later on in the story. This leaves character with more than just a small role to fill, because they end up making them more memorable than was originally planned out to be. Above all though, the two characters that lift this series to all new heights are Light and L. Light would pretty much be the perfect man if we of course ignore his overly confident and somewhat sociopathic attitude. Apart from his high intelligence, Light uses everything he has to achieve his goals. This does not limit to using his manly charms or his large enough connections or even his friends and family. But most definitely, the most memorable thing about him is his "the ends justify the means" view on reality. Because he wants world peace, he will slaughter thousands of criminals. Because he wants to continue slaughtering criminals, he needs to eliminate hundreds of police officers chasing after him. Because he needs to stop these police officers, he sacrifices dozens of acquaintances, friends, and even family. In a world where friendship and unity are essential themes in this medium, Death Note and Light in particular stand out as black sheep, and this refreshing take on the world of anime and manga as a whole ends up luring in readers and viewers in herds. But his rival is no slacker either. L is an equally interesting character with a mind that is as powerful as Light's, but presented in a different package. While Light is presented as a perfect male type of character, L is the complete opposite with terrible hygiene, sense of style, etc. It's genius really. Instead of putting two Light Yagamis one against the other, Oba decided instead to make an intense contrast that ended up leaving both characters memorable, but their rivalry legendary. Manga is a form of art that fits the series perfectly. While Black and White usually hurt a series, Death Note instead gets enhanced by it, thanks in part to the story that it presents, but also thanks to Takeshi Obata's wonderful art. The character designs are of the realistic kind, with characters having normal body proportions, and I mean, we don't really need moe here. However, Death Note is also a series that relies heavily on text to get the whole story across. This ends up needing multiple bubbles or text box that, although doesn't necessarily get in the way of reading, it certainly is a minor downer. Maybe knowing that black and white are wonderful colors for Death Note, the anime is also very dark toned. It utilizes many different shades of black, white, and gray, with more vibrant colors usually being ignored. However, red certainly is a major plus, though that might just be my personal preference. The music is very dark and heavy, with the first opening being my personal favorite, even if the second opening captures the series much better. Overall though, the anime did all the manga was able to do, and improved on that. There really aren't that many series that actually live up to people's expectations, but Death Note succeeds in that aspect. Death Note is really a work that lives up to what the people have been saying about it. For the flaws that it might have had, the series as a whole is an incredible experience, and Death Note certainly should be a must-watch or read for anyone. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Death Note series. I do reviews like these quite often, and I would love to do more. In fact, go ahead and suggest something, and if I have the time, or if I had already watched it before, maybe I'll even review it. Of course, leave a comment and maybe subscribe, because those really go a long way in motivating me to make more content. Like always though, this has been Yvern, and my boss.